and welcome back to the Nature Cure Summit, where we are talking all about the fact that all you need to heal, grow, and thrive can be found in nature, the universe, and within ourselves. I'm your host, Dr. Michelle Sands, and throughout this event, I've brought you experts from across the globe through a variety of different healing modalities to really drive home the idea that all you really do need to heal is your own vital force and the natural resources that we have all around us. So today we're talking about brain health, and we're speaking with a brain expert. She's a physician, she's an author, she's a speaker, and she's the founder of Extraordinary Sports Medicine. Dr. Joanny is one of the most sought after experts in the area of the diagnosis and treatment of concussions. You may have seen her on Fox, ABC, NBC, the Boston Globe, Miami Herald, like all over national news and national media, because she's one of the most respected experts when it comes to using natural solutions to actually heal and thrive after a concussion. She's written 3 books on this topic, including Knockout Concussions, and then also Heal Your Concussions, a 21 Day to Brain Health. Actually, that's the same book. That's the subtitle. And then she has an international bestseller. It's called Heal Your Concussion, How to Quickly and Effectively Get Back in the Game. And so a lot of people who have concussions are, as a result of sports injuries, traumatic accidents. And so Dr. Joanny really believes that there's a big connection between our physiology and our psychology when it comes to healing the brain and coming back to life and actually enjoying life after this type of injury. So Dr. Joanny, welcome to the Nature Cure Summit. I'm super excited to speak with you today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Michelle, and I'm so happy to also help you to enlighten your audience about the natural way to, in this case, to heal concussion.
Awesome. So Dr. Joanny, I'm curious. I've asked all my experts a similar question during the summit, and I find it really interesting to know, like, what makes you so passionate about brain health and specifically the work on natural healing for concussions?
Well, it started because I have an adult son, and he was 28 years old at the time, so this was back in 2012, and I was already very interested in the functioning of the brain and what made it weak and what made it strong, and then lo and behold, my own grown son got a very severe concussion. He was playing soccer, and he was hit so hard on this side of the head that he actually was blinded. Now, thankfully, it was only a temporary situation, but he was on the sidelines and he had to figure things out for himself. And while he was waiting, his eyesight did come back, and when it did, he decided to go back on the field, which everybody says, oh, no, that was his first mistake. But the thing is that he broke all the conventional rules when it comes to caring for a concussion by himself, and he still came out on top, and he was fully recovered and everything. It's been almost 5 years. He's never had a relapse, no eye problems, no headaches, no sleep problems, but it really came down to asking the one person that he thought that could help him, and that was me.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. So, that's really interesting because I often hear when people are diagnosed with a concussion, or if there's a child that plays sports and, whether it's a head injury or a blow to the head, the common advice is basically to just stop doing the sport for fear that you can re-injure it and damage it worse. So is that, you have a different feeling about that?
Oh, definitely. Because there is no research that actually proves, and believe me, I have looked through the research quite thoroughly. There is not a single piece of evidence that says that prolonged rest, even 5 to 7 days or 7 to 10 days, some physicians are telling people, will actually make your symptoms better. What's actually happening is that the opposite is happening. So researchers have found that symptoms are worse or prolonged, and people are more susceptible to depression. And it's really because when you're left to yourself without any guidance, I mean, what are you going to think about? You're going to think about the worst that's happening. And then, of course, the stress of boredom, you know, what am I going to do? You know, all that stuff comes into play. So I prefer to encourage people to try out the things that they like to do, that they want to do, and if it doesn't work out, you know, retreat for a little while and try again. But we need to get back into regular life sooner rather than later.
Wow, that's refreshing. So for people who aren't really familiar or don't understand, what exactly is happening inside the brain when a concussion takes place?
Well, the thing is that it's not a structural problem. We don't actually see any evidence of a brain being bruised or anything like that. I mean, they're trying so hard to find these micro changes in the brain, but that's not what's important. The problems that are happening are functional. So being confused, having more emotional ups and downs, dizziness, nausea, and you know, maybe even eye problems. And of course, we're talking about different parts of the body being affected, because where does the nausea and the vomiting come from, right? It's in our gut, which also has neurons. And so it's not really what's going on in the brain itself, it's what's going on in the person. And the emotional parts are what we need to pay attention to, because that was a huge clue in my line of work, because that's where I focus on, is mental emotional wellness.
That's really interesting what you just said, because a lot of times you think of it's in concussion, so there's one treatment for it, and that you know, in conventional medicine, as you told me, is just rest. Which you're actually spinning that around and saying, let's look at the actual person and what they're experiencing and what their symptoms are, and let's treat them on a mental and a physical level. So let's talk about that connection between the psychology and the physiology when talking about brain health.
Well, in Chinese medicine, we're taught that everyone is born with strengths and weaknesses. We don't know what those are until, unfortunately, we have to deal with some traumatic experience, and that's totally subjective, okay? Because the same thing might happen to somebody else, and you know, it's no big deal, rolls off their back, okay? But the thing is that we're all individuals, and we all have a different way of looking at life. We've all made different decisions, and so that's why different things will weaken, in this instance, the brain, while it won't bother somebody else. And so we have to look at the reasons behind each person's situation to find out what that situation was, or situations, and help them to get over the things that stress them out, because that's really what it is. I don't actually like the word stress, because it's just too all-encompassing, it's too general. People take it for granted, you know. In conventional medicine, they'll tell you to lower your stress levels, but that's not very useful.
Right, it's like eat better, right? Eat healthier. What does that mean? It means different for everybody, actually.
Exactly, you're right. Yeah.
So are you saying that somebody's symptoms and the effect that somebody feels from, let's say, if I have the same injury you do, we might experience the outcome differently based on our upbringing, our environment, our views on life, and our stress level? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, everyone has a totally different perspective on their concussion. Everyone has, I mean, they've got it right. You know, they say every concussion is different. However, they're still treating them pretty much all the same, which really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And even from what they're treating, it's from the physical side only. So they're looking at neck strength, you know, they're looking at the eyeballs, you know, and you know, whether the periphery vision is good or not, you know, so they're really, and telling people to exercise. Well, professional athletes are already exercising. Why are they having this problem, right? So that doesn't make sense either. So So there are a handful of researchers out there who are saying we've got to look at the psychological side of a concussion, a brain injury, because there is already evidence that people were already having stress, trauma, whatever it was that made them feel really bad just before a concussion. So I'm saying that the emotional breakdown, and it's not really a bad thing, I don't want to stigmatize it. I mean, you feel the way you feel,
Right.
that's the way it is. I accept that, and everybody should accept that. And so we should be much more compassionate about someone's misery. But the thing is that it's weakened in your brain for a reason. And so let's now find a way to build it up for real. And it's always the psychological part. It's a whole brain approach.
Yes.
Right?
When you say whole brain approach, let's dig into that a little bit. So let's say someone does have a brain injury and maybe they did have an underlying reason why they're experiencing the symptoms as they are. Maybe they're pretty bad symptoms, but they find you and they really are open to the idea of this whole brain approach. How would they start?
Oh gosh, the fact that they are open to a new idea, that's a great start.
Yeah.
Because that is how somebody has already made the decision that they're going to recover. And so that's where it starts, is that open-mindedness. So the next thing I do with them is I go through a very thorough,
We're showing how Dr. Joanny knocked something over. We're okay.
Okay. You can edit that out.
Yeah, we will.
Okay, so, okay, what was I about to say now? Okay, all right. So the first thing that I do is I always sit down with that person, either over Skype or in person, and I go through a very detailed intake with them, and that includes building a very detailed psychological profile. And, questions like when you get angry, when were you really angry, why were you, things like that, right? So build that up, and then I come up with a diagnosis as per Chinese diagnosis. And that takes about 3.5 years of study, so I'm not going to get into that.
Right, yeah, no, internet.
So then we start talking about the things that really bothered them, and we go into techniques to help them to release those things. So I have definitely certain ways of helping people to release the deep disappointments that they've had in life. One of them is, it's not journaling, it's really writing a Dear John letter to that person, for instance, and throwing everything at it, so if you were really upset or angry with, somebody, then it's about getting it, just pouring all your emotions and any hate, any grief, everything onto that page, and you write until you can't write anymore, and then you burn it.
Oh, I love that. It's like you're releasing it from yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
Beautiful.
So, I mean, sure, the paper burning is symbolic, but it's saying, yeah, I'm letting this go. Because the thing is that it's about forgiving yourself. Because a lot of people, when they get into a really bad situation, they feel that they've done something, or maybe I should have seen this coming, and they blame themselves in a lot of ways. So it's really about forgiving yourself, because that's where the power really is. The power really isn't in forgiving the other person. The other person couldn't care less. If the truth be known, the other person couldn't care less. They're off having fun.
Right.
And you're miserable and suffering. So
I always say, like, when you hold a grudge, the only person that you're hurting is yourself. Like, honestly, like, you're the one who's keeping yourself upset. And, to hear that it could actually, and snowball into these physical manifestations, which is really the ongoing theme throughout the summit, talking to different people of all different diseases, whether it be gut issues, skin problems, concussions, like we're speaking about now. It really is an underlying theme that, our thoughts really control our ability to heal.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's totally true. The thing is, it's not just our thoughts, and that's what I'm talking about, the whole brain approach, because we have to get rid of that emotional charge. Because, there's that thing called cognitive behavioral training. A lot of neuropsychologists will use that. The problem with it is that it's not about logic. So that's why we have to look at the underlying emotional trauma that's there, because that's the motivation. Because once we have gotten rid of that emotional charge and the motivation, then our cognitive part of the brain will start working properly. We got to get rid of that emotional charge. That's the bottom line.